Today we're going to be talking about how to write a book review for your Goodreads book review assignments. You're going to be using the different habits that you're learning about in class to write these book reviews. So I'm going to give you an example on how to start a book review. The book that I'm reviewing is called Circus Mirandus. It was recommended to me by a 7th grader and I'm really enjoying it. So we're going to begin this book review by using the habits. The first thing you need to do with a book is you do a sneak peek, which is like a preview of a movie. So before I read, I think. What do I already know about this book? The pictures and the headings tell me the purpose of this type of text is to teach me. Those are the questions that I'm going to talk about in my book review. I want to answer those questions about this book. So, it's called Circus Mirandus, as the author's name, Cassie Beasley, and on the back it says, you have to believe it to see it. But what's cool about this book is there's also an opening here, and it's got an inside cover that you can see, and it has, right here, a summary. So, I would look at this first and I would think about, what do I know? While previewing this book, I can see that the text, the cover, and the summary all have something to do with the circus and magic. So I'd write about that in my book review. The next thing you do is you connect. As I read, I connect the reading to my ideas and experiences, and I think to myself, this reminds me of, it's a lot like, I can compare and contrast this too. So you're going to be using your own experiences. I'm going to read a section from Circus Mirandus and make a connection. The paragraph says, Ephraim was on the beach when the wind changed. It was mid-morning and he had spent a pleasant hour scraping together moss from the rocks and some frail twigs in order to build a small mossy soldier with a thin twiggy gun. So in my book review, I would make that connection because when I was a little girl, my sister and I used to play at the ocean, and it reminds me of when I would make boats out of coconut shells with leaves and twigs, and we would put them in the ocean. And I can compare it because what's similar is we were on the beach, and I can contrast it because he was all alone, whereas I was with my sister. And I would write that in my book review. The next section is when you take the leading role by asking the questions. As I read, I monitor my understanding. I say to myself, this does not make sense because I know all the words except I could reread this piece to find out, and I can use context clues. Part of being a reader is asking questions and actually realizing that you don't know what's going on. So this section here, it has a letter from Ephraim. He's writing it to his father, and it made me stop and think, and I had to figure out what was going on. He writes, Dear Father, Mother told me I had to go to school today, and I told her that I would. But I'm at the beach, again, tossing pebbles at the gulls. I think you had better come home very soon because I am considering becoming a train robber. All my love, Ephraim. And I couldn't figure out why he was writing these letters to his dad. So I would write in my book review about that letter, and then I would say that because it was confusing, I turned back and I reread. I also used the context clues around that letter to figure out that here, earlier, it actually talks about how his dad had to go to war and how he was really struggling with that. So in my book review, I would give an example of a time that I had a question in the book and how I figured out the answer to that question. The very last thing that is really important to write about writing a good book review is that you've got to have an interesting beginning. If you start off with, there was a circus, it was a nice circus, there was a character, his name was Ephraim. Like seriously, I'm falling asleep just talking like that, much less wanting to read a book review that starts like that. So a really great way to start a book review would be to start with a question. Can you imagine being on a beach where suddenly something magical happens, that's what happens to Ephraim, the main character in Circus Mirandus. So, start with a question. Another great idea is you could start with a quote from the book or something exciting that happens. So for these book reports, it's really important that you try to think of that first sentence as being a hook, something that hooks you and gets you to want to read it. So that is going to be part of what we're going to be looking for while you're writing those book reviews. I hope that this helped you, and I'm really looking forward to reading your book reports. Make sure you include a preview of your book by answering these questions, a connection to your book to real life, and ask a question and figure out what the answer is.